Welcome, everyone. This is Recovery Dharma. My name is Julia. I'm one of the facilitators in this beautiful, beautiful community, and I'm very happy to be here today. I'd like to begin our practice in the sort of the traditional way whenever we come into the presence of the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The person who is able to awaken to the causes and conditions of misery and upset and joy in his own life and in the lives of others, so much so that he spent the rest of his life, 40 years, teaching about it. That was shared in an oral tradition for many, many years until it was finally written down in thousands and thousands of sutras and teachings called the Dharma. And the Buddha, one of the things that he imparted is that one of the most important aspects to embodying the Dharma is to come into the presence of community, which is Sangha. It's one thing to go into a mountain or into a cave or into a hut and meditate. It's another thing to be in the heart of it all, peopling, as we say in the modern world. That really puts the Dharma to test, is when we're around community. So the Sangha was considered so important that he called it a jewel. So in that tradition, we begin the practice by setting an intention. Why are we here? What do we want to do? What do we want to achieve? And I paint these little cards and I write sentiments of loving kindness on the back as a means of creating an intention for our practice. And I read them before each practice. And this one reads, "May I cultivate consistency in my presence. May I cultivate consistency in my presence." When I first read that, I superimposed the word practice instead of presence. I replaced it. And I wondered why. I was like, wow, look at that. Look at my mind switching out those words. And so I had to read it more than once. And then I had to contemplate, what did I actually mean by that? May I cultivate consistency in my presence. And I'm not going to answer that. I'm just going to create some space to not know. Like, I don't actually know what I mean. What does it mean to have a consistent presence? Just ask yourself the question. Be curious. Maybe one way to get at an answer or to gain some clarity is to ask, what does being inconsistent in my presence look like, feel like, sound like? I wonder. So just play with that for a moment as you settle in. May I cultivate consistency in my presence. Take a moment to breathe that in. Maybe breathe in the word consistency or even inconsistency. And breathe out the word presence. And just as you continue to breathe for a few minutes, just notice the body finding some ease and some relaxation. On Wednesdays, friends, in the Spokane Sangha, we have been exploring Zen practitioners, Zen masters. And we've been doing this for years. We studied the work of Suzuki Roshi, Zen mind, beginner mind. We have explored some of Thich Nhat Hanh's work, Roshi Joan Halifax. And we spend years working through a single book. And for the last couple of years, we've been working through an ancient text called The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And although it isn't traditionally Zen, we kind of took a break from that. It is nevertheless an invaluable piece of work by Shantideva, who was an 8th century monk studying at Nalanda University in India, the world's first university for Buddhism, a very ancient place whose ruins still remain. And this really unassuming little book is actually packed with all kinds of wisdom, and it reads like a poem. It's got many, 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 many verses, and these 4-line, 5-line poem-like verses that we read a couple at a time. And we're in the 9th chapter, which is the cultivation of wisdom. And we've been just slowly picking this apart, jumping around a little bit. And today I came across a reading, a verse in this chapter. It's the 133rd and 34th verse that I thought was really lovely and applicable to the journey of recovery. You know, that is one of the challenges in reading some of these ancient texts. And it's something that I really enjoy doing, which is how can I take these Buddhist teachings and make them applicable not only to contemporary society, but to the topic of recovery, to the topic of healing. And so today, what I'd like to do is read this for you and then give a little bit of an interpretation. And then we'll sit quietly for a little bit before we open for sharing. I'd like to share with you before I read this that my motivation, why it jumped out at me, is because of something in Buddhism called the Four Noble Reminders. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what those 4 things are, the first noble reminder is that you have a precious human life. It's a beautiful thing to say and maybe receive if you can. I have a precious human life. The second noble reminder is the nature of reality is impermanent. And that means everything changes. The good things are going to turn bad. You know, the weather's going to come, the sunny day, the bright, beautiful sunny day. The weather's going to come in and shift that. And maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe that's a relief. Maybe you're in a sunny but dry drought place, and maybe weather coming in brings rain. So maybe what's bad is good, right? The bottom line is everything changes. Everything is impermanent. That is the nature of reality. The third noble reminder is karma. Our actions have consequences, both good, bad, neutral. And the fourth noble reminder is something called the folly of samsara, which is that we as human beings have a tendency to do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. We cling, we're attached. And because of those attachments, we are miserable. We suffer. We're uncomfortable. Today, in the two verses that I'd like to share with you today, Shantideva talks about impermanence. This is what he has to say. Something that abandons a gross state and becomes subtle is at one time gross and at another time subtle, and therefore impermanent. In the same way, you should assert that all functioning things are impermanent. If gross pleasure is not different from pleasure itself, then clearly pleasure, and therefore the general principle, are impermanent. You assert that a manifest phenomenon does not exist at the time of its cause, and thus that a product does not exist at the time of its cause. How does that relate to recovery? And really, the only thing that's coming alive for me, and by the way, I'm no expert here, I'm no Buddhist scholar. The one thing that I have going for me is that I'm insatiably curious and I'm motivated by wonder. And so, what came alive for me as I was reading about gross pleasure was I just loved the two words. I loved the juxtaposition there. And really it's an interpretation and it might even be a bit of a misinterpretation because I can't help but wonder if the word gross doesn't mean disgusting, it means general. But I love the fact that it could mean disgusting. Disgusting pleasure is impermanent. Delicious pleasure is impermanent. All pleasure is impermanent. That's the takeaway message. And all of the things that generate pleasure, be it gross, be it wonderful, be it kind of neutral, all of those conditions, all of those things, they too are subject to change. What he doesn't talk about in this particular section is that pleasure and pain is considered a worldly wind in Buddhism. It is one of four worldly winds. Buddhism loves lists and categories and things like that. There are many pairs of opposites: pleasure, pain, gain, loss, blame, praise, so on and so forth. But these pleasure and pain are explored intensely in the sutras. And he's not talking about pain too much. He's talking about how pleasure can be painful, how pleasure can be enjoyable, how pleasure can be neutral. He just gave that little reminder, and that's the wisdom piece. If we can remember, oh, this thing that I'm really enjoying in the positive way, it's not going to last. Not because life is mean to me and the universe hates me, but because that's just the law of reality. Everything is subject to change. And this terrible thing that I'm experiencing right now, maybe the awful repercussion of what was once really delicious, like, for example, when I overeat at Thanksgiving. In the moment, my gut is just like, whoa, I feel terrible and I feel like it's going to last forever. But in the back of my mind, this negative wisdom knows it won't. It won't last forever. I will be temporarily uncomfortable. And rather than get stuck in the misery of it, rather than wallow and swirl in it, maybe I can use this experience as fodder to wake up and get curious about, why did I overeat? Why did I drink too much? Why did I go back to using substances that I know aren't good for me? And this is a beautiful opportunity to look at any narratives that might be arising with that, any social stigmatizing narratives that aren't even yours. I'll give you one. It's very popular. People with addictions have no willpower. People with addictions have moral failings. Yikes. And here's the thing. Let's present some wisdom to that stigmatizing idea. The wisdom is, I'm going to put it into first person. I have moral failings. Guess what? That's true. And not the whole truth. And that piece right there is the wisdom piece, not the whole truth. My moral wobblings don't even compare to my positive ethical conduct. Doesn't compare to my aspirations to be kind and loving and thoughtful and considerate and honest. And yeah, I do fail sometimes because I'm gloriously human. And if I may be so bold, you are just like me. I am just like you. So this really flips that narrative on its head, and we don't have to be so beaten down by it. Substance use disorder isn't only a disorder of will. There are many, many, many conditions for people who are suffering through their recovery that live and extend outside just beyond willpower. That's an oversimplification and a gross one at that, both general and disgusting. And here's the take home message for Shantideva that I'd like to leave. One of the things that the mind can do is it attaches itself to the worst aspects of ourselves. And we just beat ourselves over and over and over and over again. And because we cling to that, maybe it's a regret, maybe it's a humiliation, and we keep bringing it forward over and over. And we tell ourselves, I do this because I never want to forget. That may be true. And the truth is, by hammering ourselves over the head with this, we're denying the reality of impermanence. Everything changes, including me. So, in my worst states back then, is not where I am today. And if I keep bringing that history and overlaying it on top of the present moment, I'm doing a disservice to my past, I'm doing a disservice to the present, and I'm definitely doing a disservice to the future. So the practice is the present moment. What is your presence? And can you be here with yourself exactly as you are? That's the question. Knowing that exactly as you are is going to change, has already changed so much. So, for a few minutes of silence, just be here. Breathe in and out, present. If you find yourself struggling with craving, that's where you are. And that's a painful place to be. And I bet you're strong enough to be with that for a minute or two. If your present moment is very different than who you were a month ago or a week ago, you can take stock of that. Maybe your present moment is one of fatigue and you just want to turn off the mind a little bit and rest. That's a beautiful way to practice. However you are, meet yourself and breathe and enjoy this time. And what I'd like to do is end our practice today with a dedication of merit. And I'm going to have Lo turn on the recording. Are we back to it's up back on? Okay. So one of our Sangha members mentioned Sravasti Abbey. And Sravasti Abbey is a monastic environment. It's a training abbey for monastics. And originally it was focusing on women, nuns, and they've opened it up to all monastics. The abbess is Venerable Tubten Chodron, and it is 90 minutes, an hour from Spokane. We are so fortunate. These abbeys are few and far between, and to have one so close to home, for anyone who's local, I highly recommend that you check it out. And for those of you in Soul Center today, the information to Sravasti Abbey is on the door, and you can take a picture of it. They have all kinds of things on their website. I highly, highly recommend that you check it out. And they sing a dedication of merit after every practice that I really like. And I thought I'd share that with you today for our dedication. If it's comfortable for you, you can bring your hands together at the level of the heart. You can bring your hands in prayer pose, whatever feels most at ease to you. In the Buddhist practice, after we've spent time with the three jewels, simply being here, listening, bearing witness, it's an act of extraordinary kindness and compassion. And this produces merit, goodness, that we don't just keep for ourselves, but we're invited to radiate it, share it, offer it out into the world. And in that way, it can multiply infinitely. And so it is tradition to end a practice by dedicating this goodness, by dedicating this merit, by dedicating your efforts, your wonder. Due to this merit may we obtain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May this precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that no have decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you so much, friends. We'll see you next time. Namaste.